Brief biography. The first night of the holy month of Ramadan, in the year 470 AH, was dawning when the news of a child's birth in the village of Jilan brought joy to his family. Abdul Qadir, as he was named, was raised in a family renowned for its piety, righteousness and devotion. His formative years were steeped in the teachings of the Quran and the monotheistic ethics which he absorbed from his family environment. Regarding the birth of Hazrat Abdul Qadir, may Allah sanctify his soul, Qutb Yunini, may Allah have mercy on him, stated, Hazrat Abdul Qadir was born in 470 AH. His son Abdul Razak asked him about his birth year, and he replied, I do not know exactly, but I came to Baghdad the same year the famous scholar and muhaddith al-Tamimi passed away. I was 18 years old then. Al-Tamimi died in 488 AH, which means his birth year was 470 AH, as it was 18 years before Al-Tamimi's death. Allama Sheikh Shamsuddin Ibn Nasiruddin al-Dimashqi, may Allah have mercy on him, said, he was born in the year 470 in the city of Jil, a large plain and one of the towns of Dilam. Jil, also known as Jilan, where Hazrat Abdul Qadir was born, is one of the small towns of Dilam. Sheikh Muhyiddin Abu Muhammad Abdul Qadir ibn Abi Salih ibn Abdullah ibn Yahya al-Zahid ibn Muhammad ibn Dawood ibn Musa ibn Abdullah ibn Musa al-Jawn ibn Abdullah al-Mad ibn Hassan al-Muthana ibn the commander of the faithful Hassan ibn the commander of the faithful Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with them all. His mother, Kaya Jabbar, Fatima bint Abi Abdullah al-Salma'i, was a pious and devout woman. Her grave is in the city of Sara in Iran, a place of prayer and devotion for lovers of Allah. The Sheikh's relentless pursuit of religious knowledge and the secrets of the spiritual path led him to surpass all others of his time. His spiritual knowledge, drawn from his heart, manifested in his speech, and his leadership and sainthood became evident, inspiring all who followed his journey. When the Sheikh moved to Baghdad, he began teaching, preaching and delivering sermons at the school of Abu Sa'id al-Makhzumi. Daily, many people gathered to benefit from his teachings, and scholars and righteous individuals often visited him, taking spiritual benefits from his sessions. Abu Sa'id al-Mubarak bin Ali al-Makhzumi, Abu al-Khattab Mahfuz bin Ahmad al-Kaluzani, Abu al-Hasan Muhammad ibn al-Qadi ibn Yala Abu Sa'id, Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim, Abu al-Gunaim, Abu Ghalib Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Bakilani, Abu Uthman Ismail bin Muhammad, Isfahani Abu al-Khair Hamad bin Muslim al-Dabaskadi, Abu Said al-Mukarrimi Muhammad bin Ali bin Maimun Yahya ibn Ali Tabrizi al-Wafa ibn Akil. Al-Muqtadi, Al-Mustajir, Al-Mustashid, Al-Rashid, Al-Muqtafi, Al-Mustanjid. Futu Al-Ghaib, Al-Fath Al-Rabbani wa Al-Faid Al-Ramani, Diwan Ashar Ghaus-e-Azam, Malfuzat Qadriya, Al-Gunya li Talibi, Tariq Al-Haq. On the night of the 8th of Rabi al-Awwal in 561 AH, Hazrat Abu Muhammad Muhyiddin Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani spent his final moments in this ephemeral world. While lying on his deathbed, his eldest son Abdul Wahab said, "O my master, advise me what I should act upon after you." The Sheikh said, "Fear Allah, do not fear anyone except Allah. Place your hopes only in Allah and take all your needs to Allah alone. Tawheed, Tawheed, unify everything in Allah. Keep your heart connected with Allah so that nothing remains absent from it, nor does anything escape from it. I am the core without the peel. Be accommodating to those other than yourselves and treat them respectfully. Here lies great mercy." Then he added, "Peace be upon you, the mercy of Allah and His blessings. May Allah forgive me and may He accept me and you." Afterward he recited, "La ilaha illa Allah." There is no deity but Allah. Allah is free from imperfection and exalted. He is the ever-living who does not fear death. Then 3 times he uttered, "Allah, Allah, Allah." His blessed voice fell silent, his tongue rested, and his noble soul departed from his body. The Sheikh advised, "Be with Allah as if there is no creation, and be with creation as if there is no self. If you are with creation without self, you will be just and pious, and you will be safe from harm. Leave everyone at the door of your retreat and enter alone. In solitude you will find solace in the presence of Allah. With the eye of your inner self, you will witness beyond what is visible. Your ego will fade, and in its place the command and proximity of Allah will come. Then your ignorance will turn into knowledge, your distance into closeness, your silence into remembrance, and your estrangement into intimacy. Die to your ego so that you may truly live. If you find in your heart hatred or love for someone, then present their actions in light of the Quran and Sunnah. If those actions are blameworthy, then rejoice, for you are in agreement with Allah and His Messenger. But if their actions are praiseworthy, according to the Quran and Sunnah, and you still harbor hatred for them, then you are unjust and disobedient to Allah and His Messenger. Repent to Allah and ask for love for that person and others among the friends of Allah." Sa'adi, may Allah have mercy on him, writes in Gulistan, Abdul Qadir Jilani was seen in the sacred Kaaba, placing his head on the stones and saying, "O Allah, forgive me. If I am deserving of punishment, then on the day of resurrection raise me blind, so I am not embarrassed before the righteous." The famous mystic Abdul Rahman Jami, may Allah sanctify his soul, writes in Shawahid an-Nubuwah, "It is necessary to mention the virtues and perfections of the family of the Prophet, peace be upon him, as many virtuous people from his lineage existed, including Hazrat Sultan al-Awliya, the beloved of Allah, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. May Allah be pleased with him."
Like waves that crash on the endless shore, Allah's mercy is vast forevermore. No soul too broken, no heart too lost. His love redeems, no matter the cost. Through valleys deep and mountains steep the seeker walks, though the climb cuts deep. With every step, a whisper, a prayer. Ya Allah, guide me to your care. In the heart that trusts, a garden blooms, free of despair, untouched by gloom. Contentment reigns where faith takes root, bearing the sweetest eternal fruit. Behind the veil of this fleeting life lies peace unbroken, free from strife. Beyond the stars, where angels sing, awaits the promise of the King. Hold firm to the rope, unyielding, strong. It will guide you right when all feels wrong. Through storms of doubt, through winds that wail, the rope of Allah will never fail. In silent prostration, the heart will speak. The one who knows, to him we seek. No words are needed, no cries, no plea, for he knows the soul's deepest decree. Do you hear it call the garden's breeze? A whisper of peace through the swaying trees. Each deed a seed in the soil we sow, for the eternal gardens where rivers flow. When the world turns dark and hope seems far, the lantern of faith shines like a star. Its gentle glow dispels the night and guides the heart to Allah's light. The call to prayer floats on the air, a melody tender, a sound so fair. It beckons the soul both near and far to bow to the one Al-Akbar. Each tear that falls in the quiet night is a pearl of love in Allah's sight. A sinner's cry, a lover's plea, each tear returns the soul to thee. When the night seems endless, cold and long, the dawn of forgiveness sings its song. With every astaghfirullah we say, Allah's mercy lights the way. The faithful march through desert sand, with trust in Allah, a steadfast band, their hearts ablaze with a holy fire, yearning for Allah, their sole desire. The threads of fate are soft yet strong, in Allah's hands they all belong. Each twist, each turn, His wisdom shows, a tapestry only the Creator knows. Hope is the breath that revives the soul, a gift from Allah that makes us whole. No matter the burden, no matter the fall, His mercy awaits when we make the call. A promise made to the pure and true, for those who strive, for those who renew. Gardens eternal, where souls will meet, in the shade of His throne, where hearts find heat. With my forehead pressed to the earth below, I find a peace the world won't know. In sujud the heart is free to whisper love and bow to Thee. The stars above in their radiant glow speak of a beauty we long to know. Each light a sign, each twinkle a trace of the majesty found in Allah's face. La ilaha illallah, a phrase so light, yet it shakes the heavens with its might. A key to paradise, a shield in pain, a whisper of truth that will always remain. One day, in gardens lush and green, we'll meet again, in a world unseen. No tears, no pain, just joy untold in the company of Allah, a treasure to hold. Love for Allah, a fire so bright it consumes all darkness, brings pure delight. Through trials and loss it burns the same, an eternal flame in His glorious name. In the quiet corners of the heart, a call to Allah will never depart. It whispers through every tear and sigh, drawing the soul, making it fly. The moon in the sky, so gentle, so bright, reflects the beauty of Allah's light. In its glow we find peace, a quiet balm, a reminder of Allah's eternal calm. When the storms of life rage and roar, Allah's mercy is the shelter we adore. A refuge so vast, no fear can remain. In His care we find peace from pain. Gratitude, a path of light, leading us from the dark to the bright. Each blessing a step, each prayer a sign of Allah's love so pure, divine. The Quran speaks and hearts are still, guiding us with Allah's will. Its verses, a comfort, a shield from harm, a light that keeps us safe and warm. The world may call with glitter and gleam, but its beauty fades like a fleeting dream. Only Allah's truth remains, ever clear, guiding the heart away from fear. Patience is a tree with roots so deep it grows in silence. In times we weep, but in its branches fruit will bloom, the sweetness of peace that dispels the gloom. The soul yearns for what it cannot see, a love so pure, a bond so free. It seeks the face of the one above. In every prayer, it whispers love. In prayer, the soul finds its rest, a refuge from the world's cruel test. Each bow, each prostration, a gentle plea to Allah who hears, who sets us free. The tears of a believer fall like rain, cleansing the heart, healing the pain. Each drop, a prayer, each cry, a plea for Allah's mercy and grace.
Poetry has always been a vital tool for the Sufis, offering nourishment from the fountain of sincere expression. It serves as a fitting medium to depict the most intricate truths of the spiritual path, truths that appear to the pure-hearted followers of this nation in their journey towards the divine light, walking with the feet of honesty and detachment from worldly matters, flying on the wings of love to traverse the heavens of spiritual states and stations, until their pilgrimage and travel ends at the tents of closeness to God. We previously concluded our examination of Sufi writings by stating that there are three primary forms through which the practitioners have expressed their most profound nuances and truths. These forms convey the fundamental issue of ordinary language's failure to translate these meanings accurately. These expressive forms are prose writing with highly technical terms, symbolic storytelling filled with hints, and Sufi poetry. Studying these three expressive forms is necessary because they are the only means of truly understanding Sufism and the path of spiritual authority. While poetry holds its particular significance, it sometimes appears intermixed with the other forms in a single Sufi work. A prime example is the book Al-Insan al-Kamil, The Perfect Man, by Abdul Qadir Jilani, a seminal work in Sufi literature. This book, by its nature, is a comprehensive exploration of Sufi thought and practice, and it incorporates all three forms of expression. Sufi poetry, as demonstrated in the poetry of Imam al-Ghazali, serves as a clear testimony to this point. Since Sufi poetry, whether in its brief verses or lengthy poems, holds such importance, and since the Sufis have embraced it as an expressive form from the dawn of Sufism to the present day, we will pause here to define the general characteristics that distinguish this poetic style. The first and most prominent characteristic of Sufi poetry is the poet's deliberate use of symbolism, allusion, and the creation of metaphors to imbue the verse with innumerable hidden meanings. This use of symbolism in Sufi poetry is not just a literary device, but a key to unlocking the deeper layers of meaning, keeping the reader intrigued and engaged. The keys to the locks of the unseen have come to you, and here I am, hiding and revealing my secrets. I am speaking to you, my dear, listen to me. The symbol is not the object, and the secret cannot be found in plain sight. Sufi symbols are the terms the Sufis have agreed upon to reveal their meanings to themselves and others. Many of their guides, like their spiritual masters, have worked to clarify these symbols through long lists of treatises, including works like the Al-Kushairi's Risala, Al-Luma, Al-Kashf al-Majub, and Ibn Arabi's Terms of the Sufis. The most prevalent and often used symbols in Sufi poetry are references to the divine through the beloved names of famous Arab women, such as Layla, Hind, Salma, and Lubna. For example, when Afif al-Din al-Tilimsani wants to express his vision of the divine beauty in the world, he says, "The qualities and names have obstructed my vision. I have been lost in her hair, and yet it is from her that light has guided me." This symbolic derivation reflects the Sufi belief that all beauty in existence is a manifestation of the intrinsic divine beauty. The beloved names do not exceed being mere sensory hints to the original beauty, which is shared by the beloveds, but far surpasses them in its transcendence. In Sufi poetry, the second defining characteristic is the frequent use of exaggeration and hyperbole. These traits are evident in verses where the poet expresses extraordinary spiritual experiences and the intense waves of divine light they witness. Such expressions are particularly noticeable when the Sufi poet speaks of their deep love, longing, and burning passion. A prime example is found in the lines, "The flood of Noah has appeared in my weeping. Without my sighs, my tears would have drowned me, and without my tears, my sighs would have burnt me." This use of exaggeration also appears in other famous Sufi quatrains recited in spiritual gatherings, such as those of Shibli and Junaid. "If I had 80 seas of tears flowing each day and night, I would exhaust them until I began anew. For such is the lover when they are in love." The Sufis also frequently associate love with death, often mentioning the death of lovers who die of love. In the Sufi sense, this concept refers to the death of the ego and attachment to the self. In this regard, the Egyptian Sufi Dhul Nun expresses this at the beginning of one of his poems. I die, yet my longing for you does not die, and my love for you remains unfulfilled. Sufis often admired the Azhari poets, finding inspiration in their poetry, which is delicate and filled with love. It's notable that the sensuous imagery often seen in their poetry is rare in Sufi poetry, except for some instances, like in the poetry of Abd al-Ghani al-Nabulsi. Finally, Sufi poetry often consists of short verses, each expressing a unique, delicate nuance or a few such moments before the poet refrains from elaborating further. Many of the greatest Sufi poets' works contain poems of at most 5 verses, sometimes even only a single or 2-line verse. This characteristic is evident in the works of Al-Hallaj, Shibli, Ibn Arabi, Tilimsani, and others. Regarding meter and form, Sufi poetry generally follows the well-known classical Arabic meters, such as the Tawil, Wafir, and Kamil. These meters allow the poet ample space to express their thoughts. However, Sufis often feel confined by the rules of meter, breaking the norms to express their spiritual experiences beyond the restrictions of form, as seen in the work of Rumi. Lastly, a distinctive feature of Sufi poetry is the large number of anonymous poems. Many works written during the early centuries of Sufism are attributed to no known author. These verses are often introduced with phrases such as "some say" or "it was narrated by someone." The well-known quatrain "I love you in 2 ways" is a perfect example of this phenomenon, sometimes attributed to Rabia al-Adawiya, while other times to the Egyptian Sufi Dhul Nun. Another example is the following delicate verse. A group whose hearts are attached to God, they have no desires for worldly status or pleasures. These are the general characteristics of the poetic legacy left by the Sufis. While these characteristics are broad, each poet has unique features such as the love of diminutives and wordplay in Ibn al-Farid's poetry, or the repetition of synonyms in Ibn Arabi's works. However, these personal features are still considered part of the broader qualities of Sufi poetry. The Divan of Abdul Qadir al-Jilani includes the Imam's poetry and a collection of selected prose texts. Imam al-Jilani, also known as Muhyiddin Abdul Qadir, who passed away in 561 AH, holds a prominent place in the history of Sufism. He laid the foundations for his Sufi path, which his followers spread after his death. His Qadiriya order became one of the most widespread Sufi paths in the Islamic world. However, despite his influence, many of his works still needed to receive their deserved attention. Some were published without proper verification, while others remain in manuscript form. Historians have extensively recorded the life and legacy of Imam al-Jilani, with some dedicating entire volumes to his biography, highlighting his achievements, actions, and writings. Among the vast number of biographies and accounts about him, 2 statements stand out. The first appears in Shatarat al-Dahab, where Ibn al-Imad mentions, "Al-Jilani's poetry is exquisite and remarkable," and the second comes from al-Yafi'i, who describes his writings as ambiguous. This remarkable poetry and enigmatic writing is presented here as a collection titled Divan of al-Jilani. The compilation consists of 2 parts. The first includes his poems and Sufi verses composed in the language of the mystics, while the second part gathers his symbolic essays filled with countless allusions and hints, as described by al-Yafi'i as ambiguous speech. Interestingly, Imam al-Jilani has yet to be known to have had any published or even handwritten collections of his poems. Instead, a few scattered poems and essays attributed to him have been gathered. These works are being presented for the first time in this divan. This leads us to reconsider the meaning of the term divan. Some mistakenly interpret divan as solely a collection of poetry. This limited understanding needs to capture the full scope of the term. Divan, a Persian word adopted into Arabic, refers to a compilation or collection of papers bound together, regardless of their content, whether poetry or prose. This definition is consistent with its usage in classical Arabic dictionaries. and it is in this context that we use the term here. In this light, Imam al-Jilani's Divan includes not only his well-known works, but also lesser-known writings, comprising a significant number of poems and essays. Imam al-Jilani delivered his teachings in Baghdad for 40 years, during which he regularly recited his poetry and delivered his sermons. His students and followers diligently recorded his speeches, including profound expressions and occasional poems. Unfortunately, the library of the Qadiri school was repeatedly damaged by various catastrophes. Had the library survived, including the destruction caused by the Mongol invasions in the 7th century, we would now have an extensive collection of his poetic and prose works, which remain primarily lost. Nevertheless, we are left to explore his surviving works, as preserved by his followers. A final question remains. Did Imam al-Jilani ever write a poetry collection in Persian? This is a matter of debate. Some sources, including Mirza Ali Madras, mention a Persian divan of mystic and gnoseological poems attributed to Imam al-Jilani. Dr. Ibrahim al-Dasuki Shatta also suggests that Imam al-Jilani composed a divan of ghazals in Persian. The only surviving manuscript of this Persian divan is supposedly held in the Indian Office Library in London. However, we believe these Persian poems are later translations created by Persian Sufis after Imam al-Jilani arrived in Baghdad at 18. If Imam al-Jilani had composed them himself, there would undoubtedly be more references to them in his extensive work, primarily focusing on Arabic. In this edition of the Divan, we present his poems and essays, including those wrongly attributed to him or misattributed to others. Poems of the Divan. Imam al-Jilani was not a poet in the conventional sense. For him, poetry was a means to express the subtle truths of Sufism. Thus, the value of the poems in this divan lies not in their literary quality, but in their spiritual significance, as they reflect the teachings of one of the most significant figures in Sufism. It includes 9 Sufi poems, comprising 258 lines, which represent the essence of Imam al-Jilani's teachings, as distilled through his mystical and reflective language. These poems explore typical Sufi themes, yet with distinctive characteristics that set his style apart: the use of pride and self-glorification. Some of Imam al-Jilani's verses display a notable tone of pride and self-glorification, which is not commonly found in the works of other Sufi poets. This tendency to highlight the exalted status of the Sufi master within the spiritual hierarchy is a recurring theme in his poetry: the closing of poems with his name or title. Many of his poems end with a reference to his name or one of his famous titles, a poetic convention known as taqalis. This is a common feature in Persian poetry, where the poet often ends a verse by referring to themselves through a pseudonym or title. The addition of refrains. Imam al-Jilani's poems include refrains, which his followers often sang during Sufi gatherings. These refrains helped emphasize the poem's core message, and were frequently repeated after each verse to deepen the spiritual experience of the gathering. The practical nature of his poetry. As a prominent scholar and spiritual leader of his time, Imam al-Jilani did not focus excessively on crafting lengthy and ornate poems. His poetry was direct and aimed at expressing spiritual insights rather than showcasing literary prowess. This contrasts with the more elaborate works of other Sufi poets not involved in jurisprudence. The following lines provide a glimpse into his poetic style. What is in love's intoxication but the presence of the beloved? With love's pure wine, the soul is exalted and set free. The Means. This is one of the most essential poems in the collection, consisting of 48 verses in the rhyme and meter. The poem expresses intense love and spiritual yearning, referencing Sufi symbols like wine, melodies, and the cup. These are typical of Sufi poetry, where physical symbols represent spiritual meanings. The Noble Poem. This poem, written in 21 verses of rhyme and meter, conveys the spiritual themes of Imam al-Jilani's era. It emphasizes spiritual ascension, the perfect human, divine truths, and spiritual enlightenment. This poem also touches on the idea of the perfect man, al-Insan al-Kamil, a central theme in Sufi philosophy. My beloved gave me to drink, an 11-verse rhyme poem that narrates Imam al-Jilani's intoxication with divine love. He describes the experience of drinking from the cup of love, awakening from the distraction of worldly life, and reaching a state of spiritual closeness and fulfillment. The Beautiful Names. This is a 64-verse rhyme poem. It reflects on the names of God as described in Surah Al-Hashr. Imam al-Jilani contemplates these divine attributes, considering them not only as names but as the ontological foundation for all existence. The poem connects these divine names with the concept of perfection in Sufi thought. Lifting the Veils. This is the shortest poem in the collection, consisting of only 10 verses in rhyme. Despite its brevity, it delicately conveys the intense spiritual emotions of a Sufi lover. It describes the experience of inner longing and the taste of spiritual intoxication upon drinking from the cup of divine love. The Wine Poem. Known widely as, this poem is one of Imam al-Jilani's most famous. It consists of verses describing the experience of divine intoxication and spiritual ecstasy. The poem is revered by many Sufi practitioners and is believed to have special spiritual significance. Some even assign unique benefits and powers to the reading of this poem. My Heart is Overflowing. This poem contains 21 verses in rhyme, where Imam al-Jilani expresses deep love and spiritual yearning. He describes the condition of a lover who has surrendered entirely to divine love and transcended the boundaries of earthly existence. I have been raised to the highest of heights. This 17-verse rhyme poem reflects the soul's ascension to the highest spiritual realms. It describes the journey of a Sufi master who reaches the highest degree of spiritual perfection and nearness to God, to the saints. In this poem, Imam al-Jilani addresses the saints, mentioning how he imparts his spiritual secrets to them. The poem explores the concepts of divine knowledge, spiritual elevation, and the mastery of esoteric wisdom. This poem expresses his deep understanding of the Sufi path and his connection to the saints of his time. The Mystical Poem. This is one of Imam al-Jilani's most significant poems, often called the Ghauthiya, the poem of the spiritual savior. It is well known among Sufi circles for its themes of spiritual assistance and the mystical presence of the Imam as a guiding force. The poem, consisting of numerous verses, embodies the deep connection between the spiritual guide and the seeker. It describes the divine assistance that flows from the pole of the universe, which is believed to provide intercession and help in times of need. This poem holds a special place in the hearts of the Qadiri Sufi order, who attribute great mystical powers to it. The Ascended Heart. This poem, composed of 17 verses in rhyme, captures the Imam's elevation to the highest spiritual levels. He expresses having transcended earthly limitations and attained union with the divine. The verses are filled with the imagery of ascension and the perfect realization of spiritual fulfillment, reflecting a Sufi's ultimate quest for proximity to God. The Cup of Love. The 21 verses of this rhyme poem express an overwhelming, ecstatic love. Imam al-Jilani speaks of the intoxication that comes from drinking the divine wine of love, which causes him to lose his awareness of worldly life and plunge into spiritual ecstasy. The imagery is rich with themes of spiritual intoxication, union with the divine, and the quest for the perfect man, al-Insan al-Kamil. The Inward Journey. This 17-verse rhyme poem reflects the soul's ascension to the highest spiritual realms. The verses speak of the journey of a Sufi master who has attained spiritual perfection, having moved beyond all material attachments and reached the highest levels of divine proximity. It's a powerful depiction of the inward spiritual voyage the Sufi seeker undergoes. The Beautiful Names. In this long 64-verse rhyme poem, Imam al-Jilani contemplates the divine names, central in Sufi thought. These names, derived from the Quranic verse in Surah al-Hashr, are seen as attributes in the very structure of reality. Through this poem, al-Jilani expresses a mystical understanding of God's names and their significance in spiritual ascension and realization of divine unity. The Spiritual Veil. The shortest poem in the collection, this 10-verse rhyme poem encapsulates the longing and the sweetness of spiritual intoxication. Even though brief, it holds an intense emotional appeal, portraying a heart touched by divine love and the yearning for union with the beloved. Despite its simplicity, the poem reveals the depths of a Sufi's inner journey. The title of this poem, My Beloved Gave Me Drink, suggests its central theme of divine intoxication. The 11 verses, written in a delicate rhyme, express the Imam's feelings after drinking the cup of divine love, which leads him into an ecstatic state. In this poem, Imam al-Jilani describes his journey into spiritual awakening, where he is completely overwhelmed by the love of the divine, which causes him to forget the distractions of worldly life and experience closeness to God. This is a poem with a rhyme in the meter, consisting of 21 verses. It presents a sophisticated expression of Sufi thought, with themes of spiritual ascent, divine truths, and the concept of the perfect man. The Imam delves into spiritual ascension, describing how a soul progresses through stages of closeness to God. The poem also touches upon themes of intercession, the manifestation of divine mercy, and the vision of the truth, or haqq. It reflects the core beliefs of the Sufi tradition, particularly the idea of the pole or khutbah, which symbolizes the perfect human being who has attained complete unity with the divine. This long rhyme poem consists of 64 verses, focusing on invoking the divine names, specifically those revealed in Surah al-Hashr of the Quran. Imam al-Jilani meditates on these sacred names, reflecting on their significance in the spiritual journey. The poem emphasizes the idea that through the divine names, one can access deeper truths about existence and the nature of God. It also highlights the Sufi belief that by contemplating these names, a person can elevate their spiritual state and progress toward ultimate realization. This is the shortest poem in the collection, composed of only 10 verses. Despite its brevity, it encapsulates profound Sufi ideas, especially the concept of removing spiritual veils that separate the soul from the divine. It speaks of the longing for divine connection and the joy of being in the presence of the beloved. The poem's simplicity does not diminish its depth, but rather enhances the directness of its mystical message. Known also as the Ghauthiya, or the wine poem, this is perhaps one of Imam al-Jilani's most famous works. The verses express deep spiritual intoxication, where the soul drinks the wine of divine love and reaches a state of union with the divine. The poem has a special place in the hearts of the Qadiri Sufi order, who believe in the transformative power of reciting it. Despite its fame, some later manuscripts mistakenly attribute it to another Sufi master, Ibrahim al-Dusuki, due to alterations made by certain scribes. This poem, however, remains one of the most treasured works of Imam al-Jilani, admired for its powerful imagery and the depth of its mystical experience. The 21 verses of this rhyme poem depict the journey of the lover, the mystic, toward the divine. The Imam expresses the deep yearning for spiritual fulfillment and divine proximity, symbolized by drinking from the cup of divine love. The poem explores the themes of spiritual intoxication and the complete surrender of the self to the divine will, central ideas in Sufi thought. In this poem, Imam al-Jilani describes the concept of the perfect man, al-Insan al-Kamil, who embodies the highest spiritual state and serves as the ideal spiritual guide for others. This figure, often equated with the pole, Qutb, is the one who has attained complete closeness to God and serves as a conduit for divine mercy and guidance. The poem expresses the profound respect and reverence for this spiritual figure, whose perfection is a model for all seekers on the Sufi